teenage girl sits on a low wooden stool in a one-room house in a hill town nobody important has ever visited. The town is called Nazareth. The girl is mending the seam of a garment. The sun is low. The light is the color of old honey on the wall behind her. There is no one else in the room, and then the room fills with light. You can imagine the breath she did not take, the needle frozen in her hand, the way the silence in the room changed shape before the voice did. And then the voice, a voice she had never heard, a voice no one in her village had ever heard. The voice says two words, "Fear not." For 2,000 years, people have counted how many times God says those two words in the Bible. They will tell you it is 365, one for every day of the year. They will put it on coffee mugs. They will print it on calendars. They will tell you it is the most beautiful coincidence in Scripture. They are wrong. The honest number is somewhere closer to 80, maybe 100 if you count every form and every shadow of the phrase. Still the most repeated command in all of Scripture, but not one for every day. The 365 is a folk tradition, a nice story we tell ourselves. It is not in the text. And here is the strange thing. The truth is more powerful than the myth. This is not a story about a number. This is not a story about a verse. This is not a story about a doctrine. This is a story about every time the God of the universe leaned down to a terrified person and spoke two words into the worst moment of their life. Not as a greeting, as a rescue. Today we are going to walk through the 5 most pivotal fear nots in Scripture. We are going to look at the Hebrew. We are going to hear the Greek. We are going to meet 5 real people on 5 real days. And by the end, you are going to understand something about these two words that almost no one ever teaches you in church. And one day, on a black volcanic rock in the middle of the Aegean Sea, an old man will fall on his face before a voice so violent he cannot stand. We will get to that voice. But not yet. We start in the dark. Stay with me. The first time the words appear in the Bible, they are spoken to an old man under a sky full of stars. His name is Abram. He is around 80 years old. He has just won a war. 4 kings from the east had raided the cities of the plain and carried off his nephew Lot, and Abram, a wealthy nomad with 318 trained men, chased them down across the desert and brought Lot home. He should feel like a victor. He is going home to an empty tent. His wife Sarai is barren. He has no son. The covenant God gave him, that his descendants would be a great nation, is hanging by a thread that gets thinner every year. He is rich. He is respected. He is alone. And in the dark of that night, in the silence after the war, the voice comes to him in what Scripture calls a vision, the first recorded vision in the Bible. And the very first words out of the mouth of God to Abram in that vision are these: "Fear not, Abram. I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward." The Hebrew here is al-tira, and it is not gentle. It is not the soft "don't worry" of a friend. It is the imperative of a king to a soldier, a command, not a suggestion. Stop fearing. Now, here is what most people miss. God does not say fear not because Abram is afraid of the 4 kings. The battle is over. The kings are dead. The fear that is keeping an old man awake in the dark is the fear of going to his grave with no son. The fear of a promise that will not keep itself. The fear that the God who spoke to him in Ur of the Chaldees has gone silent. The first fear not in the Bible is not spoken into a battle. It is spoken into an empty crib, and it sets the pattern. Every time God says these two words, he is not speaking into the loudest fear in the room. He is speaking into the quietest one, the one underneath, the one the listener has not even said out loud yet. The next scene is harder, and it is one you will not forget. Her name is Hagar. She is an Egyptian slave woman. She was given to Abram by Sarai as a surrogate, gave birth to Ishmael, and now, years later, she has been cast out of the camp, sent into the desert with a skin of water and a piece of bread. Just her and her son. The water runs out. The Hebrew text says she laid the boy under one of the shrubs and went and sat down across from him, about a bowshot away, because she said, "Let me not see the death of the child." And she lifted her voice and wept. You can imagine it. If you have ever stood at the edge of something you could not fix, A child's hospital bed, a conversation you could not save, a door you could not reopen. You have lived a smaller version of this. A mother who cannot watch her son die, but cannot leave him either. So she sits 100 yards away in the sand and listens for the sound to stop. And the angel of God calls to her from heaven. And the first thing the voice says is, "What aileth thee, Hagar?" Fear not. Pay attention to this. God does not come to Abraham in this moment. He does not come to the prophet or the patriarch or the man with the covenant. He comes to the slave girl in the wilderness. He comes to the woman whose name most Bible readers cannot spell. He comes to the foreigner, the discarded one. And in the chapter just before this one, Hagar does something no other person in Scripture ever does. She gives God a name. She calls him El Roi, the God who sees me. Every fear not in the Bible is spoken by the God who sees, not the God who notices, not the God who keeps tabs, the God who sees you specifically at the exact distance of a bow shot from your dying hope and walks all the way across the desert to say 2 words. Keep that picture in your mind, because we go from one woman in a wilderness to 2 million people on a beach. His name is Moses. He is 80 years old. He stutters. 40 years ago, he was a prince of Egypt, then a murderer, then a fugitive, then a shepherd in the backside of the wilderness. Now he is the reluctant deliverer of a nation that has spent 400 years in chains. He has led them out, and now they are trapped. The Red Sea is in front of them. Behind them is the dust cloud of 600 chariots driven by the most feared army on the planet. Pharaoh has changed his mind. He is coming to slaughter them or drag them back. There is nowhere to go. You know what happens when people get this afraid. They turn on the leader. Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us into the wilderness to die? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. And Moses speaks the word of the Lord. Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. But it gets stranger. The Hebrew word for stand still is hititzvu. And it is not the stillness of a man relaxing. It is the stillness of a soldier locking into formation. It is a battle command. It means take your position and do not break. And then comes the line every preacher loves, but almost nobody finishes. God turns to Moses and says, "Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward." The fear not is followed by a march. 3 scenes, 3 terrors. A man in the dark afraid of an empty crib. A mother in the desert afraid of her child's last breath. A nation on the beach afraid of being erased. And one God in every scene leaning down with the same 2 words. You start to see the pattern. But the pattern is about to get personal. Quick favor before we keep going. If this is the kind of video you wish more people would make, the kind that takes Scripture seriously without putting you to sleep, hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing. It tells YouTube to show this work to more people who actually need it. And it tells me to keep making them. That is it. No long speech, because we are only halfway through. And the most important fear not in the entire Bible is still ahead of us. Let's go back to a hill town in Galilee where nothing important was ever supposed to happen. The town is called Nazareth. And in the 1st century, when a Jewish rabbi wanted to dismiss a man as a nobody, he would say, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" The population is maybe 400. The streets are dirt. There is one well. No one famous has ever come from here. No one famous is expected to. And there is a girl here. Her name is Mary. Scholars believe she is somewhere between 14 and 16 years old. She is engaged to a carpenter named Joseph. In her culture, engagement is not what it is in ours. It is legally binding. To break it requires a divorce. To violate it can require a death. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing in the same century, confirms what every Jewish girl in Nazareth would have known by heart. Under the law of Deuteronomy, a betrothed woman found pregnant by a man other than her fiancé could be taken to the edge of the town and stoned. That is the world Mary is sitting in when the room fills with light. The angel Gabriel, the same angel who, in the book of Daniel, stood before the throne of God, speaks to a teenage girl in a one-room house in a town no one important ever visited. And the first words out of his mouth are these: "Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God." The Greek here is me phobou, and the tense is everything. Gabriel does not say, "Don't start fearing." The Greek is present imperative. It means, stop the fear that is already happening. Stop trembling. Stop shaking. Stop the panic you are feeling right now in this room. Every fear not in the New Testament is built on this assumption. The listener is already terrified. God never says these words in calm weather. He says them when the boat is already filling up with water. And then Gabriel tells her what God is asking. She is going to be pregnant. She is not married. The baby is the Son of God. The plan for the salvation of humanity is going to walk through her body. You have to sit with this for a moment. A teenage girl, in a culture that could legally execute her, is being asked to carry a pregnancy nobody will believe is supernatural. She does not get a witness. She does not get a sign Joseph can see. She has to walk out the door of that room and back into a village that will count the months. And she says 6 words. "Be it unto me according to thy word." 6 words from a teenage girl. And history bends. The first "fear not" of the New Testament is spoken to the woman who would carry God. And from that moment forward, almost every time you see these 2 words again in Scripture, the voice speaking them is hers, the voice of her Son. And this is where it gets remarkable, because if you keep reading the Gospels, you start to notice something. Jesus says, "Fear not" more times than anyone else in the Bible. He says it to Peter when the net is so heavy with fish, it is about to tear the boat. "Fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men." He says it to Jairus, a synagogue ruler whose 12-year-old daughter has just died. The messenger arrives. The child is gone. Why bother the master any further? And Jesus turns to a grieving father and says 4 words. "Be not afraid, only believe." He says it on the sea, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a storm, when the disciples see what they think is a ghost walking on the water. And the voice comes across the wind. "Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid." He says it through an angel to a group of women on Sunday morning at the empty tomb. "Fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified." Have you noticed something? Every time, every single time, the "fear not" is spoken into a moment when the listener is already in the worst of it. Peter is overwhelmed. Jairus is grieving. The disciples think they are about to drown. The women have just buried their friend. God never says these words in your calm seasons. He says them when the floor is dropping out. Here is the part nobody tells you. The pattern is not, "Don't be afraid." That is not what God is saying. The pattern is, "I am here. Now stop." Fear not is never an isolated command. It is always attached to a presence. "I am thy shield," God says to Abram. "I have heard the voice of the lad," the angel says to Hagar. "See the salvation of the Lord," Moses says to Israel. "Thou hast found favor with God," Gabriel says to Mary. "It is I," Jesus says to the disciples. The command to stop fearing is always tied to a reason to stop. And the reason is never a logic. The reason is always a person. You do not stop being afraid because the danger is smaller than you thought. You stop being afraid because someone has just walked into the room. And now we have to talk about the last room. The room on a rock. The room with no walls. Lit by a face like the sun shining in his strength. The island is called Patmos. It is a piece of black volcanic rock in the Aegean Sea, about 30 miles off the coast of what is now western Turkey. It is treeless. It is windswept. In the 1st century, it is where the Roman Empire sent the men it wanted to forget. The church historian Eusebius, writing around the year 324, tells us that the Emperor Domitian, one of the cruelest of the Caesars, banished an old man named John to this rock around the year 95 for the crime of testifying about Jesus. The old man is the last apostle. Peter is dead, crucified upside down in Rome. James, his own brother, was beheaded 60 years earlier. Thomas was killed in India. Paul was beheaded outside Rome. Every man who walked with Jesus on the dusty roads of Galilee is in the ground. Every man except one. John is now somewhere in his 90s. He is the youngest man who ever leaned against Jesus at a table. He is now the oldest man alive who ever saw his face. And on what he calls the Lord's day, on a black rock in the middle of the sea, he hears a voice behind him like the sound of a trumpet. He turns, and what he sees, no human language can carry. A figure in the middle of 7 golden lampstands, hair white as snow, eyes like a flame of fire, feet like burnished bronze, glowing as if just out of the furnace, a voice like the sound of many waters, and a face. John writes, like the sun shining in his strength, and John writes one sentence about what happens next. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. He does not say he knelt. He does not say he bowed. He says he collapsed. A 90-year-old man, alone on a rock, his knees gave out and he hit the ground like a corpse. And then comes the moment. The figure reaches out. The hand of the glorified Christ touches the shoulder of his oldest friend. And the voice, the same voice that once said, "Sit down," the same voice that once said, "Come to me," the same voice that once said, "Do you love me? Feed my sheep," speaks 2 words. Me phobou, fear not. The same Greek tense that Gabriel used with a teenage girl in Nazareth 60 years earlier is now used with that girl's grown son's last living disciple on a rock at the edge of the empire. And here is the thing almost nobody catches. John has heard these exact words from this exact voice before. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 17, John is on a mountain with Peter and James. Jesus is transfigured before them. His face shines like the sun. His clothes turn white as light. And the 3 disciples fall on their faces, terrified. And Jesus comes and touches them and says, "Arise and be not afraid." That was when John was a young man. This is when John is an old man. The first time he heard "Fear not" from the Lord, he was a fisherman from Galilee whose whole life was still ahead of him. The last time he heard "Fear not" from the Lord, he was a banished exile whose whole life was almost behind him. The arc of one apostle's entire life is bookended by the same 2 words, spoken by the same voice, spoken with the same hand on his shoulder, spoken with the same eyes. Only now those eyes were like a flame of fire. John does not see a metaphor. He does not see a symbol. He does not see a dream. He sees the Jesus he knew, the same Jesus, standing in the middle of the lampstands, speaking the same 2 words. And you have had moments like this, not on a volcanic island, not before a blazing vision, but you have had moments where the floor of your life dropped out from under you, the phone call no one wants, the doctor's voice on the other end, the bedroom door closing behind a child who is leaving and you do not know if they are coming back. The 2 o'clock in the morning when the silence is so loud you cannot sleep. And in those moments you did not need a sermon. You did not need a theology lecture. You did not need a Bible verse on a coffee mug. You needed 2 words and a hand on your shoulder, and the knowledge that the same Jesus who said "Fear not" to a teenage girl, and to a grieving father, and to a frightened apostle on a rock was standing in the room. He was. He is. So what does this leave us with? 3 things. And I want you to take them with you when you close this video. First, the number is not 365. The honest number is closer to 80. But that does not make the pattern smaller. It makes it sharper. Every single "fear not" in Scripture is spoken into a specific moment of specific terror to a specific person. Not a slogan. Not a coffee mug. A rescue. Second, the Greek tense matters more than any teacher ever told you. Me phobou. Stop the fear that is already happening. Every "fear not" in the New Testament assumes the listener is already shaking. God does not say these words in your calm seasons. He says them in your worst moment, which means if you're afraid right now. And somebody watching this is. That is exactly the kind of moment "Fear not" was made for. You are not disqualified by your fear. Your fear is the address those 2 words were sent to. Third, and this one I want you to sit with, every "fear not" in the Bible has the same hidden structure underneath it. It is never just 2 words. It is always 3 things. Fear not, I am here. Now listen. The shepherds got the angels. Mary got Gabriel. Moses got the cloud. John got the glorified Christ. And you, wherever you are, whatever you are holding tonight, whatever phone call you are afraid is coming, you get the same God, not a different one, not a watered-down one, not a smaller one, the same God who saw a slave girl in a desert. The same God who saw a teenage girl in Nazareth, the same God who reached down to an old man on a rock and put a hand on his shoulder. Which, fear not, in this video hit you the hardest? Hagar in the desert, Mary in her bedroom, John on the rock? Tell me below. I read every comment. Fear not, he is here. And he is the first and the last.